Hello, welcome back to another episode of Understanding Woburn's Community Preservation Act. I'm Emily Block.
I'm Carol Youngclaus.
And today we have the great honor of having Catherine Roth with us, who is the Associate Director of the Community Preservation Coalition. Thank you so much for coming, Catherine.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks. We invited you because there's a lot of, the CPA can be somewhat confusing. And while we try to educate ourselves about it, sometimes there's things come up and we would just like better clarification. And we thought this would be a great opportunity to kind of figure out some of the complicated issues.
Sure, I'd be happy to help you with that.
And some of the issues that people who are opposed to the CPA come up with. And one of the ones that people have asked us about is, why do we even need this surcharge? Isn't the city responsible for doing all these things that we are claiming CPA can do?
Well, that's a great question. And I think really it's important to point out that when you say, isn't the city responsible, the city is really you as residents of Woburn. The city represents you. Its budget comes from the taxpayers in Woburn. And so the CPA surcharge provides some additional revenues to help with a whole category, whole different type of project that has kind of fallen by the wayside, that perhaps the city, as budgets have become more tight over the years, can no longer fund with its existing budget. And so CPA funds can be used for those types of projects. And in addition to that, the benefit is that by implementing the CPA surcharge, that makes Woburn eligible to receive annual matching funds from the statewide Community Preservation Trust Fund. Until Woburn adopts the CPA and implements that surcharge, it won't be eligible to receive those checks every year from the state, the way other CPA communities have been for some time now.
Well, you lead right into the next question, which is, what is it about this matching? Because I know when it was first passed, the communities who had it had 100% matches, and it's been declining ever since, which is understandable as more communities come in. But what is the CPC going to try to do about this in the State House?
Well, that's another good question. The match has been declining over the years, and I think it's important for folks to understand that the CPA program is really kind of independent of the state's legislature and budget on an annual basis. It's funded through fees charged at the registries of deeds. And those fees go into, are collected by the state, and they go into the statewide Community Preservation Trust Fund that's used to provide these matching funds to communities that are that have adopted the CPA program. Over time, the program has been so popular that more and more communities have been adopting it. And so there are more and more communities that need to get those matching funds every year. At the same time, there, really since the economic downturn starting in around 2008, there's been less activity at the registries of deeds across the state. And so the revenues coming into that fund have diminished at the same time that the number of communities participating in the program has grown. So that's why the match rate has been going down. We have been working, our organization has been working with the state legislature for the past few years to kind of beef up that trust fund. And the state legislature has transferred additional funds into that statewide Community Preservation Trust Fund from the annual budget surplus. Believe it or not, there is a small surplus every year from the state budget. And so they have done that the past few years, and that's yielded a higher match rate the past couple of years. This year we will, it looks like we may receive another $10 million from the state budget surplus for the CPA Trust Fund. And we're also working with legislative leaders to figure out kind of a long-range strategy to get the program kind of more on an independent footing the way that it was originally. because legislative leaders have said, well, we can't do this every year. There are other things that need that budget surplus funding and so on and so forth. So we are working on a long-term strategy because we do realize that more and more communities are becoming interested and wanting to be able to participate and benefit from the program.
So I have a question about what happens to the money once it is distributed. It stays with Woburn if Woburn, it doesn't go back to the state at any point.
No, it doesn't. The funds that Woburn would receive every year from the Community Preservation Trust Fund, this statewide trust fund, would be deposited right in Woburn's accounts, and they become Woburn funds. Woburn, part of Woburn's local bank account for Woburn to spend on projects that are eligible for CPA funds locally.
And we can bank some of it if we choose not to use it?
Absolutely.
If there's something looming that's a very, very big project, we can bank against that?
Exactly. So the funds can roll over from year to year. If there's no immediate use, they can be they can accrue over the years to build up for a larger project that the community anticipates needing to fund in the future.
You mentioned working with the legislators. Are you finding it's a difficult issue to get passed, to get the excess budget? Is it partisan?
That's a really good question. We actually have been working with, to promote the CPA program for many years, and
15.
15, yes. And in fact, we just recently celebrated up at the State House last week our 15th anniversary of the program, and we had over 200 people, as well as the governor, Charlie Baker, came and spoke. And the Senate President, Speaker of the House, all gave speeches at that event, and they are very bullish on CPA, the CPA program, and in general, the program really enjoys the support of the state legislature because many of these state legislators go back to their districts. They're representing communities that already have adopted CPA and have been working with the program for many years. And they see the benefits of the program. They see on the ground in their communities, on their main streets, how the program has benefited the community. And so that they can really understand how the program is improving municipalities across the Commonwealth. And so then they obviously support it. At this celebration, both the governor and then also the Speaker of the House, Senate President, really were concerned, along with our organization, about the future of the program, and indicated that they really feel that they would like to work with us and other program advocates to, again, try to get the program on a more stable footing going forward, so that communities like Woburn that are looking to adopt now, in 2015 potentially, would be able to enjoy a nice, robust annual match going forward to whatever is raised locally with the program.
That's fantastic. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about your organization and how you're funded.
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. I've been working for the Community Preservation Coalition for over 10 years now. We really came together as an organization, so we're a coalition, we're a nonprofit organization formed of other nonprofit organizations. We have 7 partner organizations, and these groups really came together in the 1990s to work on getting the CPA legislation passed at the state level. And then when we were successful in getting CPA passed into law, when it was signed into law in the year 2000 by then Governor Paul Cellucci,
who was also a Republican.
Then we stayed together as an organization after that, because there was a realization that in order for CPA to be successful, communities would have to be educated about it, they'd have to learn about it, they'd have to know it was there. Initially, communities, when it was new, they didn't know what it was. And to help communities not only to adopt it, but also to implement it. Because it's a bit of a learning curve, kind of beginning to implement it. And so our organization works with communities like Woburn, looking to learn more about the program, but also then, if Woburn were to adopt it, then we would be available to help the community kind of get up and running with it. So that's something that we do as an organization because we really believe the program benefits communities in the state and benefits the Commonwealth as a whole.
And does your salary come out of the CPA?
No, our funding comes from foundations. We get some of our funding from foundations. We get some of our funding from our partner organizations. As I mentioned, there are 7 partner organizations, also nonprofits that work in the areas of affordable housing, open space preservation, and historic preservation. And so we get some funding from them, and we also get some funding from municipalities that are working with the CPA program. In the year 2007, we decided to really throw open our organization as a coalition to municipalities to see if they would like to join our coalition and help support our work. And I'm happy to say that most of the communities that work with the CPA program have felt that our organization provides enough of a benefit that they've wanted to join, and so they pay annual membership dues, again on an optional basis. But we have a very high participation rate. I believe there's 158 CPA communities, and I believe we have 155 that are members.
That's quite positive.
Pretty positive, yeah.
But again, they vote on an annual basis to
Right.
see if they want to continue supporting us, and they can come and go as they want. It's completely optional.
And that leads to voting it in. If Woburn does decide to vote it in, some of the people are confused also about how the surcharges work.
Okay.
So we're going for a 1%, but we are eligible to go up to 3%.
Right, that's correct.
And some people are confused about how that works. If you voted in at 1%, does it automatically go up?
Oh, no,
Does it decline?
No, it would stay at 1%. Communities can decide that they would like to raise their surcharge at some point. If they want to do that, they have to go through the same process that you are going through now to adopt CPA.
So of general vote.
So
Have to
any
go
change
a
is up to
general
the
vote.
voter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Any change has to go through that process.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
increasing a surcharge, decreasing a surcharge.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, you could decide you wanted to decrease it if folks felt that they didn't want to keep it
Has
at
anybody ever
1%.
done that?
We have seen a number of communities vote to decrease their surcharge, and a number of communities have actually voted to increase their surcharges because they've decided that they want to have a bigger budget to work with in terms of their CPA program.
Sure.
So it's been about, I think actually there have been a few more that have increased it, believe it or not, than decreased, but it's about even. There's a handful on both sides that have done both ways. So that's an option for communities to consider.
So if Woburn should find that there was a large project that was coming up and the funding we don't receive right now is enough to fund it, then perhaps the following year we could see if we could vote in a larger amount if the public wants it.
Exactly, but most communities stick with the surcharge that they adopt for a number of years.
Yeah, and see how it works.
See how it works, see if the funds that are produced by the program are enough to allow the city to do the things that it wants to do.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
And what if Woburn decides that CPA just does not work for Woburn after voting it in?
If the residents of Woburn decide that they don't like the program, after 5 years of voting it in, you have to have the program in place for 5 years after adoption, because the idea is that you have to at least give it an opportunity to
Right.
to
Of
see how
course,
it
give it a
goes.
fair chance.
So it's kind of like a trial period,
Right.
the first 5 years. But after 5 years, the program can be voted out. Again, it would take a ballot election, just like when you're adopting it. It also requires a ballot election.
So to get it on the ballot, the exact same method that we use to get
exactly,
it.
Exactly, yeah. And so then it would go to a vote. And if folks voted it out,
Right.
then
So
it
if it's
would
not
cease
effective-
to exist. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And has that happened?
That has never happened because all of the communities that have chosen to adopt CPA have found that it's beneficial to them, and so no community has chosen to adopt. It has gone to the ballot in a couple of communities. I want to say 3 communities, if I'm remembering correctly: Hingham, Sturbridge, and I'm forgetting the third one, but I can get back to you with that information. But in all three of the, Northampton.
Oh,
City of Northampton. And in all three of those communities, an overwhelming majority decided to continue with the program when it did come up on the ballot, the idea of quitting and getting out of it.
I had
So-
heard there were some communities that were skeptical, and then when it came in, the people who were skeptical were suddenly they were the biggest proponents of it.
Yeah, that's often the case. I mean, a lot of people, it's a little bit of a leap of faith. A lot of people maybe, are afraid of change or just, don't see, why. And then once the program is in effect and they see projects going forward and they see that they or neighborhood groups or whoever in the community can actually apply for funds, and then that those projects will be carefully reviewed and vetted with input from municipal boards and committees and the public before they would go to city council for a vote. When folks realize that, then they often start to line up and want to submit project proposals, neighborhood groups or whatever. So yeah.
it's a good time to talk about how the committee is formed. So
Okay.
if it's voted into Woburn, I know we have to form.
You would have to establish a local committee to implement the program known as a Community Preservation Committee.
Okay.
So it would be a committee like any other committee that you have here in town.
Is it a paid position?
Oh, no, it's
Volunteers.
Volunteers, yep, volunteer positions. And it's a committee composed of from 5 to 9 members. Most communities do, especially of the size of Woburn, would have the full 9 members. Excuse me, it's established by ordinance. The city council would pass an ordinance, excuse me, one second, which would establish the committee. And so it has 5 required members, required under the CPA statute: a member of the Conservation Commission, a member of the Historical Commission, a member of the Planning Board, a member of the Local Housing Authority, and a member of the Recreation Committee. And then you can add 4 additional members on top of that. So as I said, most cities of the size of Woburn would add those additional 4 members. And it would be up to the city to decide how those members got on the board, whether they would be appointed or whether they would actually be elected positions. Some cities actually have some elected CPA committee members.
And if it's appointed by the city council?
It could be appointed by the city council. It could be appointed by another body within the city. I know you mentioned earlier you have a redevelopment authority.
Yes.
Local redevelopment authority could appoint a member. If you have a finance committee or a capital planning committee,
Yes.
any of those committees could be charged with
Committees who have experts on these kinds of projects.
Exactly. But again, it would be really up to the city to decide that. You might decide that you want those positions to all be at-large positions. You might want to tap folks in the community that have expertise in the areas of community preservation. Maybe you have a local historic preservation expert that might want to sit on that board as an at-large member.
Right.
So again, it's really up to the city after it adopts CPA to decide who will be on that committee, who those additional members will be, and how they'll get on that committee. So it's kind of up at the community's discretion.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
so it's really
Yeah.
in the hands of
in
the
the
people.
hands of the people of the community. Yeah.
I wanted to go back to something else you were talking about, the separate budget. How do you
Okay.
know it stays a separate budget? We know that the CPA is only for these things. It's not part of the general budget.
Right. Well, it states very clearly in the CPA law that the funds will be kept separate on your books. So your city accountant, will have some separate line items just for CPA, where those funds will be accounted for, it's as I said, it remains completely separate on your town accounts. And it can only be used for CPA eligible projects. It can never go to your city's general fund. Those funds are a dedicated source of funds for CPA needs. So for the types of projects that you want to do in open space preservation, which can cover a lot of different things, including, oftentimes communities use it to preserve their water bodies. If there's invasive species growing in the water bodies or pollutants or whatever, it can be used to clean up local water bodies. I know you said you had a local pond.
We have a
lovely.
beautiful horn pond.
Yeah. So there's,
Yeah.
again, when I say open space preservation, I realize you may not have a lot of open space to preserve, but there are other uses of those funds. Of course, recreation projects, outdoor recreation projects, historic preservation, and affordable housing. So
We have a lot of history in Woburn, too.
I'm sure you do. I mean, that's really what Massachusetts is known for. I mean, that's really where we get folks really coming from all over the world now because of our history. We have a very unique history, and that's, I think, part of why CPA is so important, because it's that history that really draws interest and tourist dollars and folks coming to go to our museums and see our beautiful historic homes and buildings and so on and so forth.
We have we have a couple old cemeteries that are in desperate need of preservation. Some of the tombstones, and I was talking to the historical commission, not the commission, Historic Society.
It's very confusing.
It is, and they are hiring someone with money that they've raised through fundraising to do an assessment of the cemeteries to find out if there's tombstones that have been under the ground that they don't locate.
Great.
And I was talking to her, and I said, CPA would be good for this. And
Yeah,
she thought,
absolutely
yes.
would.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, I was cruising on the CDC website, and one of the things I noticed was there was a copy, this town's copy of, I believe it was the Declaration of Independence, that CPA was able to give them the funds to preserve that.
Yep.
Can you imagine losing something like that?
It's hard to imagine.
Oh,
Yeah.
and just so wonderful to have the funds available
Yep.
to protect it.
Yeah, a lot of times some of these beautiful, and important historic documents are just not stored in the proper facilities in our city halls and town
Right.
halls. Not because, we don't want to store them correctly,
It's expensive.
but because it's expensive,
Right.
or over the years people didn't realize how, exposure to the elements or just
Sure.
the air or whatever was going to
Acid-free
deteriorate those
storage.
documents. So many cities and towns that have adopted CPA are using some of their monies to help preserve and restore
These
those.
are irreplaceable.
They are, absolutely.
The library has quite an extensive collection of Civil War memorabilia, which they don't really have a place to store or display.
Yep, yep.
So this would be something for that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What is the difference between a surcharge and a property tax increase?
Well, that's a good question. So the CPA surcharge is a surcharge of whatever percent you adopt. So
Right.
you're looking to adopt it at 1% on your property tax bill after it's been calculated, okay? So in order to calculate your property tax bill, the assessor takes your assessed value of your property and then applies the city's tax rate to that.
Right.
And then comes up with your tax bill.
Right.
And then the surcharge would be applied against that, okay? So it doesn't actually raise your tax rate.
Minus the exemption.
Minus any exemptions, exactly.
100,000.
Exactly, minus, of course, the first $100,000 of your assessed property value.
Right.
Absolutely. So the surcharge, again, is applied to your tax bill, and it does not affect that overall tax rate that was used to calculate your bill. So a lot of
It just
times-
rides on the top.
Exactly, it's just a tiny bit that is surcharged there at the bottom of your tax bill. And it comes up on your tax bill. I actually own a property in my town, and we have CPA, we have adopted CPA. And it comes up as just a small line on your tax bill at the bottom after you get, the total amount, and then there's a line that says CPA.
Yeah,
And
we
then
did the calculation
We have a 1%
here.
surcharge actually in my town too.
You have
So,
1%?
yep. So
We did the
it's-
calculation here and figured at 1%, the average homeowner would be spending something between $25 and $27 a year.
Yeah.
And it
That's
works out
that's
to
a
$2 a month, so
Yeah.
it's really very small.
Yeah, it's a reasonable rate considering that then you get the additional funds from the state
That's
on
right.
top of it, and that those funds can all be applied to achieving some of the things that you want to achieve here in your city and really improving the city. And really what we're seeing the funds being used for are those kinds of quality of life types of projects like outdoor recreation facilities. Many communities are improving those, which is really important these days with the growth of our youth sports. There's always, it seems like there's never enough fields, or the fields aren't, are so heavily used that they're not in adequate condition. And also for, hiking trails, biking trails, and those types of things, because folks are really needing to get outside and exercise more. We're all finding, that our lifestyles.
And budgets are so tight.
And budgets are tight and can't allow for those types of things.
Exactly.
So that's exactly the types of things that
And
the
we
funds can be
want
used
the
for.
city to take care of plowing the streets and filling the potholes and
Exactly.
all the other things that need to be done and are
Exactly.
done pretty well in Woburn.
Right,
But there's nothing left over.
Nothing
and
left over.
CPA fills that bill.
right.
Yeah, we have the Middlesex Canal running through Woburn as well, and I wanna-
Remnants of it, yeah.
Yeah, and that would be a wonderful project
Yeah.
for CPA.
Maybe to do like a canal side park with a walkway or bike trail or whatever.
Yep.
That would be great.
There's not much space left, but enough to.
There's a little
All
bit.
It
mix
doesn't
up.
take much for a
Yeah.
hiking trail or walking trail.
Exactly,
Yeah, That'd be
exactly.
a great project. We see a lot of those types of projects going forward.
Yes.
Yeah, across the state.
Yeah.
And then there's always the option too, if you join CPA, if a town joins CPA, then they're eligible to apply for grants for big projects. Is that?
That's true. Many of the state and federal grant programs, so the funds that are available for communities to apply for, require that the municipality put forward kind of a skin in the game,
Sure.
some kind of a little pot of money to even be eligible to apply for those grants. The city has to show that it really wants it,
Of course.
And so the CPA funds can be used for that kind of matching or skin in the game,
Sure, of course.
funding. And so we're finding that increasingly it's the communities that have adopted CPA that have the funds at hand to be able then to apply for those grants. So they're the ones getting those outside grants as well. This is on top of the funds from the statewide CPA trust fund. So this is other kinds of grant programs. And that's another good point, is that another kind of something that maybe the founders of CPA didn't really think about so much, but it's been shown to be very effective at leveraging these outside funds.
Sure.
It's really true what they say, that money follows money.
Like seed money.
Seed money, exactly. And so communities are really very effectively leveraging these funds to bring other funds out from outside of the community, and also from private businesses within the community. Oftentimes will put some either extra dollars in it, or they will donate. If it's a rec project or some kind of an outdoor project, they might, if there's local landscaping companies, might throw in a couple of hours of backhoe use or whatever. So because many of these projects are really community projects that are supported by the community, and so local businesses really enjoy and like to be able to participate and
Sure,
help
and
out.
they benefit by
By the exposure, exactly, and the kind
Because
of
it
good
really
feeling
is
it
to build up
generates.
the whole community.
Exactly.
and they get a pool of people, because a CPA community has better quality of life, they get a pool of people coming in wanting to live in that community
right,
and come
yeah.
work in their businesses.
Exactly.
So, there are a lot of things that businesses can benefit from.
That's right.
Well, you were saying money leads to money, and
Money leads to
projects
money.
probably lead to other projects.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who gets to bring projects forward?
Well, as I was saying earlier, it's really anybody in the community can apply
Someone
for
has a
CPA
good idea
funds.
and
Yep.
says, I want to,
Yep.
So John Q. Voter can go up to the CPA committee and say, I have an idea, and they will weigh the value of it.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, you do have to do some legwork to, you have to, there's always
to make your case.
there's an application form that you
Yeah.
have to fill out. You have to provide some basic information. You have
Sure.
to do the legwork.
A
to be
forecast of
But
finances.
you as an individual
provide
can do it.
estimates. You can, absolutely, absolutely. Or neighborhood groups, as I
Sure.
was saying earlier, often will apply for
And then who
funds.
decides what projects actually get funded?
So it's as I said, it's a process. It's the Community Preservation Committee recommends projects, which then go to the City Council, and so the City Council has the ultimate decision. But as I said, there's a long process during which the Community Preservation Committee will review the projects that have been proposed during a given year, and the project proponents and other members of the public can come in and provide input to the committee, as well as the committee is required to meet with other boards and committees in the community to get their input.
And these are open meetings.
Open meetings,
Yep.
absolutely. Anybody can attend. And so the Community Preservation Committee will go through that long review process, and then after some time of getting all that input, we'll take a vote on which of the projects it thinks are the most compelling for the city
Of course,
that
yeah.
should go to the City Council. And
Yeah.
then the City Council would take a vote on which ones that the City Council thinks are the most important.
So no surprises.
No surprises, no surprises, yeah.
We are just about out of time, so I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add to all this great information you've given us?
Nothing off the top of my head, other than that, obviously, we think it's a great program. As I said, I've been working with communities across the state for 10 years now, and I've really seen that it's a powerful little program that can really improve communities. And as I said, nobody has opted out of it, so it really does seem that communities see the value in it as well. So, yeah.
And maybe ultimately 100% of the communities will have it.
Well, someday.
Be wonderful.
Yeah.
We don't know.
That'd be
That's
great.
something for the future.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so
yeah,
much
thank
for
you.
joining us
It's
tonight.
my pleasure.
Thank you,
My pleasure.
and thank you all for watching.